Call the meeting to order. Trustee Gasser and Johnson are excused. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Comment and input, separate from the hearing.
See what's going on first.
Being none, we'll move on. Next, everyone has had a chance to read the minutes, so we'll be looking to approve the agenda and minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve that. I'm sorry, consent agenda.
So we have a motion to approve the minutes and consent the agenda by Trustee Hinkle. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Stein. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. So passed. Reports. Sheriff's report, please.
Hi, Sergeant Fazio at the Sheriff's Office. Village of Elmwood Park monthly activity report. Village board members, President Rossi, in the month of April 2022, deputies spent more than 13 hours in the village. Deputies wrote 21 citations through the Village of Elmwood Park throughout the month of April. These citations included 10 for speeding, 2 for invalid licenses, 3 for unregistered vehicles, 3 for insurance violations, and 2 stop sign violations deputies also conducted. And 2 stop sign violations. Deputies also conducted more than 22 crime preventions at businesses and residents in the area. Deputies continue to maintain an active presence in the Village of Elmwood Park. Assigned deputies as well as area cars will continue to safeguard residential areas, ensure business security after hours, and conduct traffic prevention and enforcement in the spirit of community policing. In April, deputies spent the 13 hours of billable time in the village for an invoice total of $774.28.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right,
Thanks,
thank
John.
you.
No questions?
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, moving on then, President's report. The only update I have right now is there's 2 things. And I was just talking to Trustee Root. The window project will not be going out to bid. We're past the corrections, which took me a little bit longer than expected. But, so that's going to be about a 2-week bid, maybe a few more days, so we can then on like a Wednesday bid process. That process is handled by CUNY Architects, so we'll see the results of that when the process is complete. Next item, we did get some information back from civil engineer. So that would be Nielsen, Madsen, Barber. I was trying to engage Kapoor Architects. I did recently get engaged by them for the items of the municipal drive, which recently is requiring engineering for, and then also the repairs to the 3 driveways along East Elmwood that have been having water issues after the repaving project. So I would like to really get something back from Kapoor so that we have something to compare, but at this point we just have Nielsen. So that's it for now. Trustee Studi. Anything?
I have nothing.
Okay. Trustee Stein?
No report.
Trustee Gasser, Trustee Hinkle.
Nothing to report.
Trustee Root.
This past month, I met with President Rossi, Administrator Jenkins, and Tim Kretowitz, the electrical inspector, along with Greg from RIC Electric. And we talked about the outages and what's happening with that. RIC has been working on it, so we've asked them for a recommendation as to what they might want to do, and they're most familiar with it. So they're going to get back with us on that, and hopefully we can get that project started, because there are many areas of the village that are out. So we're working on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Administrator Jenkins.
All right. Well, first off, we completed our annual village audit that took place over the last week or so. As I say every year, we get better with every year. The auditors even commented about how organized that our office was. I literally just handed them a box of really nicely marked files and said, here you go. And they didn't have to bug us too much, so I think that's a sign that we're doing well. I won't reiterate what Trustee Root said, but I mentioned about the meeting with ROC and the progress that we're making with them. They estimated a 3-week timeline from when we had met, so it should be sometime next week. I hope that they'll give us that scope of work. We can move forward from there. And then in my report, I summarize things that we'll be talking about later on in regards to the vacant property. I did start reaching out to different recreational contractors, specifically ones that deal with municipalities and do all-in-one work, which means that they do the design, they supply the equipment, and they do installation for us. With the feelers that I've gotten out, I've talked to one company, probably more in depth than the others, got rough estimates on design work from 2 of those companies, and then I have another meeting next Thursday with another company as well. So far, I'll just tell you that I'm really impressed with, it's called Lee's Recreation. They have a couple different offices throughout southeast Wisconsin, and the best part is that when you look at their upfront fee for design work, and I asked for estimates, the one verbal amount I got was about $45,000, another verbal amount I got was about $10,000. Well, Lee's Recreation will do this for free. Because they then, as long as you buy equipment from them and they do the installation, they don't care how much time we put into the design work of everything. So I'm very happy with that. So in June, we'll officially, I'll bring a contract to you guys for you guys to officially stamp. But unless I get anything better than free, I'm going to keep pushing the ball forward with Lee's. And I'm having a great time with the rep. They're going to be meeting with me in 2 weeks from now to look at the property too. Just really good stuff. And then quickly, if you look, I printed off it's our CIP document. I know we have some new members. This is our CIP list, capital improvement project list. So again, anything that has a multi-year lifespan and things like equipment, roads, whatever it might be, are put under a CIP list. This started unofficially with the strategic planning process back in 2018, and then we put it together in an actual document end of 2019, end of 2020, beginning of 21. So this is an updated version of that document. So everything in green are things that we've completed. Everything in yellow are things that we are currently working on, and then the white are the to be determined projects. So especially, new members, please look through this. If you think of other ideas, this is a fluid working document. We can add pet projects, ideas, whatever you might have to this, so that way it stays on our radar, so not only this board, but future boards kind of have a 5-year scope of, okay, these are the projects that we either are working on or we want to work on moving forward. So you'll see in the 2022 column in the bottom chart that we're planning on doing the driveway reconstruction, the BB School lot resealing and concrete slabs, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, the Standish Lane Park, and right now I have the complex window replacements booked out for next year, but as President Rossi said, we can get these bids in place, and hopefully we can get that done this year as well. And I believe that should be it, unless there's any questions. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next item, the public hearing. A public hearing to consider the request for rezoning vacant lot on Standish Lane, tax parcel 121-03-23-30-090-00 from R1 single family residential to P1 public institutional for the purposes of the Village of Elmwood Park, purchasing such land for a private seller for the creation of a park space. The applicant being the Village of Elmwood Park. Need a motion.
That's,
Open up the public hearing.
Oh, excuse me.
that's the one reason I'm here. Learn more about this.
Do you have anything to say? And if you could please stand, say your name
Aaron Morris.
and address.
How did we come to
What's your address? Just for the record.
3458 East Elmwood? How did we come to there's 2 people that were interested in purchasing that parcel. How did we come to wind up going into a park?
There's been a well, not a lot, but a good amount, I'll say, of discussion about that specifically. Number one, the issue that the current owner has is that it's considered undevelopable for residential uses because of essentially the moratorium right now that we're experiencing with Racine's wastewater, water utility wastewater. They won't connect a lot. So there's that one. We don't see an end to that in the near future. So they're really just kind of stuck with a lot on that end. The item that came up that made it something we looked at for purchasing was the Nemona Village goals. The park-like atmosphere, preserving an additional park area to maintain grants that we get for funds, or that we get for maintaining a park. There's future discussions about what's going to happen to BB school property, and right now that's kind of utilized for the school, so that really ties up the park part of it. And then also just an overall benefit to the residents. There's been a lot of positive feedback about the park, which we saw at Planning Commission too, is there was not one negative comment at Planning Commission.
People right around that area are not happy, I know that. I don't know why they're not here, because they more or less said it was a cut and dry from what you had last meeting. So I said I'd come over and see what you guys were doing. Why didn't they put a park right here?
Well, this isn't the
With
village.
parking and all the stuff.
That's one of the reasons we talked about doing it in the actual village. This is Racine. So technically, in order to do this, we'd have to go to Racine and appeal to do something like that, actually turn this into a park. And then still, it's not actually in the village. So it still brings up the issue about BB School being the park, part of Elmwood Park right now, and being utilized by the school. So there's that's one item.
What are you gonna do with the parking? Well, eventually, everybody thinks everybody's gonna ride their little tricycles and go to the park. Well, that don't happen. And up and down the line, it's gonna be parking. You got a no parking lane? No parking at all?
Well, wouldn't be any different than what you see now for parking I always pick on my neighbors, but,
Have you seen the parking along the roadsides?
well, yes, and that's what I'm getting to is in front of my house, my neighbors are parking in front of my house pretty much every day or other day in the summer. So that's not something that I have an issue with because people are allowed to park on the streets during the day. So, and
Street
then,
parking ain't bad. That's when they pull into the.
I know, and that's an issue.
Stakes going up and down.
That's an issue we're all gonna be fighting. If you look at Taylor, which this year is worse than others, but Taylor's destroyed pretty much every spring and then rebuilt. So there's that issue, which is gonna be continuous no matter what you do. That's the human condition. And Lathrop suffers the same issue. It's destroyed every
No, the
spring.
parking on the road don't bother me. It's all the parking in everybody's, where they put the new grass that don't grow and stuff like that.
Yeah, that particular issue, so I looked up usage of parks and having kids and going to a lot of parks. You'd be amazed at how low utilization of parks in Racine County is. So, for example, what's the one right next to Pick and Save? So that one, at any given Saturday, Sunday, there's a maximum of like 3 cars in the parking lot. And that's a nicer park where people will travel to. And granted, residents who are closer by are more likely to utilize something that they can just walk to, which is something where you're gonna circumvent a car and parking adjacent to, especially with the purpose being, exercise. Most people like to walk, especially in our village. So assuming the use that we're experiencing, or that we would anticipate with the amount of people we have in the village, you'd probably get maybe 2 to 3 cars a day on a busy day. And that's just using publicly available information based off of how far people travel for cars. The American Parks Association does studies on this, and their information is telling us that we're not gonna see a lot of cars at all.
No, I don't believe there will be.
Yeah.
Not that part. I'm just saying, you're gonna get it. Somebody's gonna complain.
Oh, yeah, and that question has come up. They're not the first one to bring that up, but I've responded
I'm just saying,
with about the same.
what the few people I know that live right there in that vicinity, even the 2 people that offered to buy the lots, are saying, And one actually said, well, in the long run, it'll benefit him, because he's got two little tykes that run right across the yard in the wind. Well, you know, that's great, but, it's something to look at. And then you got, so it gets that's a busy little shop through there.
Yeah,
And even the one neighbor said his kids are guilty of it, come shooting out and playing with their bikes and that. I'm just thinking, that park could carry some liability, who's paying that?
well, it doesn't expose us to any more liability than when people ride their bikes on the
Okay.
street.
So that's not, nothing added to any taxes or whatnot that we got?
Nothing
Yeah.
changes on that. And as a municipality, we have a limit on our damage
Okay, I'm
claims.
just asking,
No, I'm explaining, I'm sorry if I'm coming off as
No.
attacking.
I know, but, so therefore, like in the taxes on this thing, is there a tax fee going into the village for the park that we pick up?
Do you want me to cover the cost part?
Yeah.
Property tax type, you know?
Well, we would
or
pay,
we do.
the only thing is the lost revenue from the taxes which they're paying now, which is, how much is that?
Like $400.
Yeah, $400 annually. That's not really much.
So the cost for the purchase itself is cash on hand from this year's budget. That's why we decided to go through with it this year. The cost for equipment is through the federal government ARPA funds. So we're sitting on about $50,000 that we can use to dedicate for the equipment. So again, that's not direct property tax dollars. And then the long-term maintenance, you know, we already take care of this property, right? We take care of BB School. So for our maintenance guys to go mow and mulch, I mean, it's not going to put that much of a dent into our budget. And certainly we wouldn't raise taxes for that.
Just some questions that came up to me, and
Yeah.
I said, I'm the guinea pig.
And
Come in
So you
there.
have to tell them again.
Okay,
I was
I'm glad you came, I wish the other people who had questions would have come too.
I do too.
Yeah.
It was talked about, and here I am.
This is the place for the public comment, that's what we wanted to hear from people,
That's
and
why I'm embarrassed a little bit.
No,
You're fine, but
You're good.
it's questions I'm gonna ask that they'd already asked. So, thank you for your time.
another,
I'll just add a quick that, once we do get a design in place and contractor in place, this will come for the plan commission for like more of that nitpicky design questions. And I would, strongly recommend that neighbors, everybody come, check it out and give that feedback.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome.
Have a good day.
Thank you, take care.
Bye-bye.
Anyone else?
I'm good with it.
You sure?
I am.
Nice chance.
I just want a big slide into the pool.
Very big slide. Worth it, no. All right, then. Now to close, we do need a motion to close.
Correct.
All right, excuse me. We will now,
Don't we need a
motion to
motion,
close.
don't we need a motion to approve it first, or
No,
no?
first you gotta close out the public hearing.
That's it.
Oh.
I move to move out of public hearing.
We have a motion on the table to end the public hearing by trustee Lewis.
Second?
Second by Hinkle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You guys have it. Hearing is closed. New business. Request to rezone a vacant lot on Standish Lane, tax parcel 121-03-23-30-090-00 from R1, single-family residential to P1, public institutional for the purpose of the Village of Elmwood Park, purchasing such land from a private seller for the creation of a park space. Asking the Village of Elmwood Park. Interesting. Chris has a nice report on this, but I do want to just say that the Planning Commission discussion on this, although limited in scope, we have a broader scope than what Planning Commission has. This was just purely zoning approval, but obviously some other items come up and we try and stay focused on zoning. But it was a very positive discussion. There were some questions that came to other residents indirectly. It was not brought up exactly at the meeting, but they were still represented to some degree at the meeting. The concerns mirror a lot of what was just discussed now. And we discussed that this is something that really should be brought to the board. This is not a final, this isn't all of a sudden you're gonna go out there one day, there's a park. There's gonna be a process of design. So there's still some steps to get through, and then this goes back to planning commission, so it keeps getting pushed back and forth. So, Chris, I'm sure you're gonna double up on some of those, but please.
Well, I'll just say that the plan commission, even after all that discussion, did approve this unanimously, the zoning change. So I think that bodes well for this vote. Assuming you guys approve that tonight, then we'll schedule a closing date with the Johnsons and President Rossi and I, and get this done. Once that's finalized, we have Nielsen and Madsen working on a new zoning map for us. So it's just taking that color map that you guys had in your packet and adding a little blue square where that property is. So that's it.
Didn't we have any questions? Please, I mean,
I have a concern about, when Mr. Morse, when he said there were two parties that were interested in buying the property. That's the first I've heard of it.
well, I don't think we have more information than what the property owner would. That's why
I'm sure the Johnsons would have jumped at that.
yes, I don't know how much of that would be.
I just thought, well, that's really different. I didn't know that at all. And I thought, like you said, Johnson's would really be interested. Well, I don't know who those people are that he was mentioning.
I don't know, and to be honest, I don't know how much that would affect our decision making at this point,
There's
because,
nothing.
just looking at the purchase value and what our previous goals were and what we're hoping to do with it.
Yeah, we have no control over that. We offered, he accepted, done deal. It's his property.
Yeah. We didn't buy this because we felt bad for the Johnsons, you know what
No,
I
I
mean?
know.
That's, and I get that comes into consideration, that's why we're hearing that, but, it's something to be aware of, and I don't know if it affects us too much.
It wasn't out on the open market for, if they had a for sale sign on it, it was a bidding situation.
No. Again, this is just the zoning change right now, that's all we're doing right now. Then Chris takes over again, brings some designers through, we'll get the pricing. So then we've got an approval process for the beginning of design, then we've got design, then planning commission, then back to us.
So we're thinking next.
It can happen still, it's just, I don't know, it's a tall order.
I'm going to talk through the timeline with Lee's. So maybe the quickest it would be, again, that's if I continue those conversations with Lee's starting now. That in June's meeting is when I would bring back officially their contract for you to approve. Assuming we've already done some back and forth with design stuff, then a plan commission meeting would also get scheduled in June for the plan commissioners to review that plan. Knowing our plan commission and knowing the neighbors as I do, that might take 2 meetings. And then after which it would come for approval for you guys to give your stamp of approval on the plan. And then we can have them go, because then we don't have to bid it out. They're doing it all in one. So it's really, they're optimistic that they could get it done by end of summer, assuming our timeline moves. Looking at it. Next.
That would be nice.
One quick question. So you mentioned the grant for like park property and so on. What is, I've never heard of that. Or have I? Should
Is that
I?
what you were talking about? I was talking about ARPA funds.
That's what it was.
Yeah, so it's the American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Okay.
We got about 25,000 of it last year. That's what you see in your accounts here,
Mhm.
right there. And then we'll get another 25,000
Okay.
this year. The general term is that we use it for lost revenues from when COVID was happening.
Mhm.
And then once we claim it as lost revenues, then we can use it for whatever you want.
Sure.
So it just seemed, again, because we don't want more strings to be tied to this money,
That's great.
I'd rather use it now on a project that we're going to get behind, rather than have it sit there and maybe we'll lose it, so,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, then we'll be looking for a motion.
I'll make one. Should I just read this verbatim then?
Sure.
Okay.
I moved to.
Make a motion to rezone a vacant lot of Spanish Lane, tax parcel 121-03-230-30-090-00 from R1 Single Family Residential to P1 Public Institutional for the purpose of the Village of Elmwood Park, purchasing such land from a private seller for the creation of a park space.
Second?
Well, we have a motion on the table from trustee Hinkle to do what he just said. Verbatim for the line item there. except for the request part. And then second by trustee Rude. Any discussion? Okay, I'd like to do a roll call on this one. Trustee Hinkle.
Hinkle, aye.
Rude, aye.
Rossi, aye.
Stein, aye. Studi, aye.
All right. And so passed. Okay, moving on. Approval of amending 2022 contract with Asphalt Contractors, Inc. for projects pertaining to the BB School property. So on this one, before I guess there's some additional items that have been requested by BB School. There's some discussion that has to happen with them because some of these items are with them, almost all are their request. And so there's that. And then also, I need to send this out. I didn't do that yet to get some other pricing because we're really pushing the limits on what is a change request versus what is an additional scope item. And I'm behind on this one. I don't feel that it's even appropriate for us to approve something like this, but I'd like to understand the framework of it a little bit more because to me the negotiation part of this is how much is BB School paying for this? And Chris and I talked about this earlier, so Chris.
Sure. So again, and I did check with Mark Kingston, our attorney, as long as we're wording it as we're amending the existing contract, which you guys have already approved, and we should be kosher. I don't know about those amounts and things, President Ross and I can look into that. But that's why it's before you without any other bids. Asphalt, as you know, you guys already approved for doing this kind of work. We figured, well, while you're here and you're bringing out your equipment, let's see what else we can tack on. So as far as what what Evergreen Academy requested, so if you look at that map that was with your packet, the two green squares, the 360-foot square in front of the building and the 1,088 square foot in the back of the building, that is the major portion of their request and also a major part of this cost. So if you look at the estimate, that's about $10,000 of this $14,000 estimate are these green squares. They rightfully so claim it gets muddy, right? There's not too much grass there. When rain falls, it's hard to kids line up, or if they want to play foursquare or whatever it might be, right? They would like to have pavement areas there to mitigate that. So that was their request. We walked through the space. We talked about doing a sidewalk around the building, pros and cons, all that stuff. So we settled on these squares as the solution. In addition to, we have been aware for a number of years that the porch, their front porch there, is probably not the safest porch in the world. We had toyed with getting bids in the past. We didn't even go down that lane because we figured it would be super expensive. So we asked Asphalt to give us an estimate on that, and surprisingly, they quoted $2,800, which is a lot cheaper than we had thought. So again, I think out of all three of these, the priority for sure is that porch. So if we can get that done there. And then finally, again, not that the parking lot absolutely has to be resurfaced and restriped, but again, since they're there with equipment, it's about $1,000 some. We might as well have them restripe and reutilize to revitalize the parking lot. Before even getting into all this, we did have a serious conversation with our tenants. Their current contract is up in about a year or two, I believe. And so we did ask up front if they're planning on staying longer in this lease, because again, we're not going to put money into a building that no one would be renting. They assured us that, in their plans, they certainly will still be there beyond at least this current lease. So we did feel like we could take this more seriously with their request. So the total of that Asphalt's estimate is about $14,000. I did send a request. I sent all this information to Evergreen Academy, and I did point out that obviously some of these projects are more of their request than our need. And so I did ask for at least a 50% reimbursement on these projects. So again, I'm waiting to hear back from them. Assuming that would go through, we would pay about $7,000, they pay about $7,000, and we knock out all these projects on the BB school.
Well, it benefits us.
Yeah.
One question I have on this, and this is just as someone that drives past this property every day, just like everyone else. There's a short sidewalk that comes up on the corner and it leads to and the children move from this school over here to this unit over here in the wintertime, I just see that unsafe, messy, and then you look at this corner, which is, you know, almost like a central part of our village, and it's this dirt path leading up to this old school, and I'm just wondering.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right here on this corner, there's a sidewalk that comes up and then it just stops and goes to nowhere.
You think just pull it out and
Just,
be done with it?
maybe just connect it so these kids aren't walking through the mud up to the school. Just keep the area looking cleaner and nicer and safer.
So they do get, to Trustee Studi's point, they do get picked up and dropped off along Taylor here. So if anything, that might aid with that too, when they're traversing, you know, back and forth.
Yeah, because these kids have to cross this intersection every day. So to make things a little safer and smoother and cleaner.
We'll just go straight from the stoop in the front then, so kind of by that
Well,
green
over
square.
here is where the
just
kids
straight out.
kind of get dropped off. Where the sidewalk stops is almost like right here. So it has a cut in. And then it looks like at one point there was a plan to connect it up to the parking lot. I'm not sure if it would go that way, but maybe just up to the parking lot. I think it looks about 15 feet of missing sidewalk. That was planned and just never executed.
I always wonder why when they don't do something like that. I don't know what the swale is like there, because at some point, I don't know what the water does in that area.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But I was just thinking because the children walk through that every single day.
Well, do we want to add that to the scope then, everything connected?
Yeah, and we want to go look at it first or just add it to it and then.
Well, let's have
decide if we
let's
want
get a
to.
price, but my opinion on this, because we're not moving forward with this until we get the engineering done.
Right,
So this is all gonna happen at the same time.
okay.
And I've used the example of Burlington, we got in trouble for doing something, and it was a much larger scale, don't get me wrong, I think we'd be fine, but it goes against the spirit of getting pricing. It is a change order to their contract, but we're at a separate site.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We're into the gray. So to keep it clean, I guess I'd be pushing it more, if we were starting the drive tomorrow, I'd say, well, now you've got to do this because you're gonna
Right,
lose the economy. And I think this is an amazing price. No one's gonna even come close to this kind of great
Right.
price. That's crazy.
And I mean, the other reason I did separate this out is just in case the driveway doesn't get done this year, we're at least still making progress on something.
So we could, my opinion, table it for now. Well, it's understood at this point, we'll get the additional item of the drive, but table this and then we talk about it next time.
yeah, we can go look at it and, see if it's a need versus a want.
We'll still need a motion for something.
Can I add something to what that piece of concrete, that's where they walk from the school to the corner and to go across the street, the Holy Cross gym. That's where they go. And that little sidewalk is just nothing. That they use it, but there's a path to that sidewalk. So it's in the grass.
Yeah.
So that's the route they take.
Anyone?
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, table or whatever. What do you want to do?
I would say the table is, well, we kind of have to, till we hear from them, right?
No, I would argue you do have the option to approve if you wanted to, but you can also direct me to, see what the quote for sidewalk is, or bring it back as a separate thing, you don't want to spend more than $20,000, I mean, make whatever motion you want, or table it and we get more bids.
Let's, my opinion, and I've never like to stay out of making motions in this position, but get confirmation, a letter of intent from BB School that they are going to continue on with another lease agreement. Get an agreement, split 50-50, get that in writing somehow, and then add the drive to it, and then I send this out. So we can at least get one more price on that. So then we've done our duty.
Agreed.
Okay, I agree.
And now someone's gonna put that into
How long do you
some
want
type
to
of
ask
motion.
for extension on the lease? How far out are you looking? You're looking 5 years, 10 years?
And I would say we have that in writing, we do have an email from them stating, I mean, it's not a signed contract, but it's, I agree, it might be too early to go into lease negotiations, that's not what I would propose, but we do have an email with their intent to continue on.
Okay.
They didn't indicate, though.
Yeah.
They didn't indicate how long?
I can look back and name
What is their current lease?
it. I think it's up in either next year or two.
Right, but how long?
3 year.
3 years?
Yeah. And they had been doing 5 years in the past. So with them shortening to 3 years, our anticipation was that was the sign that they were going to be done after the 3 years. But it sounds like for whatever reason, you know, with their other school getting built, maybe that's getting lagged, and so they anticipate they'd be here longer.
I think, weren't they thinking that they were gonna build over on Chickpea Road, they were gonna build
The
it at the
addition.
middle school
Yeah,
over there too, so I think they would be on Chickpea Road.
I think that's their long-term plan, yeah.
All right, so yes, sorry. An email from March 30th from Miss Adams, who's the, whatever her role is at Evergreen. We are planning on at least another 4 to 6 years if you allow us to.
That's after.
Again, it's not binding, but yeah,
That's
after this
the
month.
next- when they're gonna come up. Yeah, because you put that amount of money in there, if they're gonna leave you.
Well, I'd have them roll that into an actual letter of intent. It doesn't have the teeth of a contract, but it gives you a little bit more,
Leverage.
yeah.
That sounds like a good plan.
So this one's gonna try and turn that into an actual item.
So
Let
maybe
me
I
take
can,
a crack at it.
Hey.
You guys are ready. Go ahead.
I was saying I can recap and then you could just say so moved.
There you go.
So,
Fair enough.
you want a letter of intent that says something along the lines of them continuing their lease after this current lease is up, correct?
You know, put a time limit on that?
Again, I think it's too early to do that. We have them assure us that they are going to continue on. See if they're down for the 50/50. And again, I would argue like the sidewalk, that wasn't their request. If we do that, that's part of our cost. And like the parking lot isn't their request. But regardless, even if, and then we'll, again, in tabling this, you also want the normal 3 bids that we have brought with this scope order that we discussed tonight. That's all right?
So moved.
Thank you.
Here we have a motion on the table to do what Chris said
Okay.
by trustee Hinkle.
I second
This-
that.
Second by trustee Rude. Discussion?
Good job. You did good on that, Ken.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, so passed. Okay. Next, approval of accounts payable. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to sign it. It seems they have. So we'll be looking for a motion.
I move to approve the accounts payable.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve accounts payable by trustee Rude, second by trustee Hinkle. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? You guys have it, so passed. Next item, a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 1985C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which a governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, which is village administrator review. Looking for a motion.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, you can do it.
Yeah, move to go to closed session.
I'll second.
We have a motion to go into closed session for the items previously discussed or mentioned by trustee Hinkle, second by trustee Rude. Discussion? Okay, roll call.
Hinkle, aye.
Rude, aye.
Rossi, aye.
Stein, aye. Studi, aye.
All right, we are in closed session. We will adjourn from closed session. And now we're closed.